Hello, everybody. We are back. It is the No Name Cinema Society, back for another live broadcast. And you know, if you're a viewer, you know that anything can happen live. And as usual, not as usual, but like last time, this platform is not working for me right now. It's working for the other guys, so I won't be able to have my lower third, or I won't be in charge of pictures this time. It'll be the other guys. But welcome. You can't see it here, but let me tell you, my name is Jonathan Betzler. I am one of your hosts for the evening. This is the 36th episode of the No Name Cinema Society, which is kind of exciting. Now, we had a poll on Facebook. You guys voted whether or not I should get a haircut in time for tonight's episode. And it was a tie. It ended in a tie. So out of laziness, I did not get a haircut. So that is the latest news. Still long hair. Got a Bengals hat because they beat the Eagles yesterday. I have a Bengals and an Eagles hat. Could have gone either way. So let me introduce my co-host before we get started in the evening. Who's up first? And we're all within, this is kind of exciting, we're all within like 15 blocks of each other right now. We're all in Brooklyn. I'm about 10 blocks from this guy, J Money. Hey, yes. J Money, can you hear me from down the block?
That's right. Well, you're even less than 10 blocks, I think, actually. Yeah,
you're very close. You're very close. It's kind of exciting. So are you well, sir?
Me? No, I'm always sick, but I'm here to win it. So.
All right, and our other host for the evening, of course, is our frat boy element, as the fans call him, Davy Joe. How are you, sir?
I'm well, and let me tell you, I appreciate your pretending like I have something to do with the graphics. That's very nice.
I mean, between the three of us, you'd be the most likely. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, so that brings us to, I do have something I wanted to talk to you guys about. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but currently Kelly Ripa is searching for a co-host. And I'm thinking to myself, come on now, guys. Who is better than me to take over? I'm like, you know, what is that face for, Davy Joe?
I mean, I thought you were talking about me, and then you said.
Oh no! Good save.
What?
I also thought you were talking about Davy Joe. So.
No, talking about me. So I want to address Kelly directly. I want to say, Kelly Ripa, I'll be in New York for at least until mid-January. So I think you need to check me out. Let me come to be a guest host, see how it goes, trial run, and I'll blow you away. And like I'm like Regis reincarnated, if you're assuming Regis were dead, which he's not, obviously. I think we're gonna have a lot of chemistry, more chemistry than I have with these guys, right, guys?
That's absolutely correct.
Here's what I'd say. Why don't we make her a deal that if she makes you a co-host, then we'll make her a co-host as well.
It's sweet deal.
Only fair.
All right, pull up the evening schedule, J Money.
The schedule?
Yeah, we're gonna get on with the show. Kelly, keep watching. We're gonna knock your socks off, or at least I am. I'm waiting for that evening schedule to come up.
Well, to be fair, that's not what it says in your email. So.
What does it say next? It says the
image of the trial next.
Oh, okay, great.
Oh, you know what? No, you're right. I'm sorry.
I knew I was right. All right, so this is our evening schedule. Everybody.
Already terrible. Let's start from scratch.
And you get a sense of how tonight is going to go. So we're starting off. We're about to talk about Miss Sloane, which is kind of exciting. John Madden's new film. Then we got at 8:30 our indie spotlight of the night. We're talking about Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive. Romancing the Stone is our classic of the evening from 1984, and our sound off is our freeform segment. And that looked like Davy, top 5 and more Davy. So right. I don't understand why there's 75% of the sound off is Davy, but that's beside the point. All right, J Money, come back and let's start the summary. Pull up that trial or hearing photo. There it is. Let's talk about Miss Sloane, everybody. All right, so Miss Sloane is a lobbyist and master manipulator. Elizabeth Sloane is under congressional investigation for possibly breaking Senate rules during her career, all in the midst of a campaign for gun reform she's working on. In flashbacks, we see the events of the campaign that lead up to the hearing as Sloane walks the line between hero and villain, crusader and Machiavelli. So let's bring up the up for discussion sign now. The up for discussion, is it ready? It is. You're the man. Miss Sloane is our movie for discussion. How was that summary, guys?
That was spot on.
Perfect.
Spot on. I like the positive reinforcement when it comes to the summary. So, so next up is who gets the thoughts first? J Money, you get opening thoughts first. Take it away.
I wish it was a better movie.
Okay, Davy Joe.
Lithgow.
Lithgow E is I like how succinct your guys' opening thoughts are. Mine are never that succinct. I went with my buddy. I wanted my buddy to represent. We're sort of on the opposite sides of this coin. He liked it a little bit, but he struggled with the apparent invincibility of the character and felt like any attempts to make her seem vulnerable felt false. I actually liked it a lot better than he did, a lot better than any of you guys is. I thought it was a crackling, engaging with a terrific screenplay, and that's where I want to start. If you can pull up the photo of the next photo, which I believe is Pill and Chastain.
Yep.
So there it is. Loving it. So yeah, I think the screenplay is great, guys. I think it's extremely intelligent. I feel like it felt like Aaron Sorkin, except maybe even a little better because all the characters didn't sound identical. I thought it was extremely well researched. I thought it had a decent amount of political balance. I felt like the structure was perfect. If anything, my one complaint would be that I felt the structure sometimes. It's a small complaint, but like I could feel the acts change. And I think part of the idea of a screenwriter is you want to sort of hide that bit a little bit. But so that's where I have some quibbles with it. But before I do that, I want to get some rebuttals or maybe agreements. But with these comments I made about the screenplay.
I mean, it's interesting because I think for me, the screenplay is the problem I have with it just overall. It's funny that you mentioned Sorkin because it feels Sorkin-esque, but the problem is that it feels Sorkin-esque. It feels like somebody was trying to write like a Sorkin script, which felt to me kind of contrived and a little didactic. It just felt like it was very two-dimensional. Felt like it was very flimsy from that point of view. It's a movie that has a very specific mission, so it's kind of like either you want to buy into the message or you don't. It's not necessarily going to explore the issue on multiple levels. It really just has one thing to say, and it kind of says it over and over again.
Which is what?
Which is gun control, good, and government bad. Those were that was overall.
I disagree with that. I think there was a lot. I think it was I saw a lot of the character study, especially as far as Miss Sloane is concerned. David Joe, screenplay comments. All you said is E. Lithgow. So all right. So
I have some quibbles with the screenplay as well. I thought there was sort of a character that was kind of like not necessary, but got a lot of screen time.
Is this Lithgow?
No, not Lithgow. It was the prostitute. I don't.
Well, there's a reason behind that, and I guess that. So I mean, before we get to that, because I will get to that. I think it was a clever thing actually. Do you have any comments about all the comments I made about the screenplay, the positive things? Like you just ignored it.
I also thought that the
next picture,
the way it was structured, the way that they kind of start with the middle, I'm not entirely sure I'm with that either. That said, I mean, I didn't hate the movie or anything, but they're quibbles. They're quibbles.
Well, it's funny. The structure I put down to editing because I don't think that's a screenplay thing, and I want to and I do want to talk about that if we have time. We're way ahead of schedule right now, guys. I'm very excited about this. So we're on a roll. I love it. The manipulations is the next thing I want to talk about. You can take that picture down for a second, because I think this leads into what you were saying in terms of quibble. I mean, I went back and forth on this with with my buddy that came with me. In terms of this. Actually, can you skip ahead to the picture called Puppeteer, J Money?
Sure.
This idea of the character invincibility. Because I mean, I don't think, and what we talked about after screening, my buddy and I, is there was never a question of what was going to happen. It was a question of how it was going to happen. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I don't think there was any question of who was going to come out on top. I don't want to give anything away, but I mean, I think it's fairly obvious,
yes.
30 minutes into the movie. So there's that, but I mean, what I think the prostitute character plays into it, I have some issues with his performance that maybe we'll get to, but I think that is one of many red herrings that I think is a very strong thing about the screenplay. But because I mean, like one thing one thing that I had is I had several different theories about what was going to happen. One of which turned out to be right, but the fact that I had several different theories and several different things could have been plausible, I think is a positive for the film. My buddy felt like it was not. He felt like he knew that what eventually happened was one possible outcome, and he felt like it was. He wished she didn't seem so invincible, and so I think that was a big question that I wanted to address to you guys. And you guys didn't like the movie as much, so I want to see how that plays into it. But in terms of the prostitute character, I think that was a very important red herring because I had all these theories about how he played into it, and it didn't come to pass, and it sort of distracted me, and I think that was the purpose of it from some of the other things going on. So, Davey, did that address your question?
I think it did, and I still don't. I don't know. I also think I'm coming off a lot more negative about the film than I am. I don't dislike the film at all, but I don't know. It felt very flawed to me.
And the flaw is what seems like an unnecessary character. That's the flaw you got.
Well, there's that. I'm not entirely comfortable that I like the way it was structured. Starting
okay, and we'll get to that. All right, J Money. What about this red herring idea and the concept of the character's invincibility, seeming invincibility?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you with the red herring thing, and I didn't have a problem with his involvement as a character in the whole storyline. It kind of made sense. Also, it helped kind of show the cracks around the invincibility of her character. I mean, I didn't take away the idea that her character was invincible. I took away the idea that her character was very tortured, and it was that sort of internal drive created from the torture that sort of pushed her to the top. So I think that there were all these little things that happened on the sidelines where you saw her break a little bit. In the end, you can kind of question how much of that was her plan versus not. But I don't think all of it was, and I think that was the point of having that kind of thing.
So it's funny because I mean it sounds like your issue with the movies you found it preachy, and I'm very sensitive to that, generally speaking. Like even if there's issues that I agree with, I think of movies. I always say that about movies like The Sea Inside, the one with the Spanish movie, Javier Bardem. I don't know how long ago that was. I mean, like there's tons of movies, and half of Michael Moore's milieu. I mean, if not more. I mean, like he's telling me things that I agree with, but the movies frustrate me because they're so didactic. I didn't feel that here because I was so engaged in her character.
I will say that I think that her character is the thing that manages to carry the movie at all. I think that Chastain, we're not going to get into performances yet, but I just think in general Chastain does a great job here. And I think it's if you took that away, if it was just a lot of scenes of people kind of walking quickly through hallways, looking at their phones and talking, it would have been a much harder slog to get through. I mean, there were a couple times, especially when they were trying to discuss the bigger issues as a team, that I was just cringing in my seat because it felt so awkward and contrived to me.
But the debates felt real. Like, the debate between her and Michael Stuhlbarg on air. I mean, like that felt very real to me.
Real in what sense? It didn't feel realistic. It felt genuine, but I didn't feel like it was a realistic, version of what happens on a Sunday morning.
Bottom of the difference between. I mean, genuine from a performance point of view, but not realistic in that they wouldn't get as heated on national television in that sense. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and also I don't feel like.
Well, I brought it because I took it as part of her overall plan.
No, I understand that, but that wasn't realistic. I mean, her overall plan wasn't realistic in a lot of ways. There's nothing about realism in this movie, really. That's okay. I'm not complaining about that at all. I just want to make clear that I don't feel like it was necessarily a realistic representation of things. I mean, I think it's actually very telling that this is a French production. I mean, it felt like there was
sort of release from EuropaCorp, a new player in town from a distribution point of view.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So kind of exciting.
I don't know how much involvement the studio had with it, but it did feel like there were parts of it that felt like an outsider looking in. And again, that's totally fine. I don't have a problem with that either.
That's an interesting point. I can see that for sure. I can see that. So I have a few more topics to discuss here that I wrote down. We've touched on a number of them, but I want to see where you guys want to go next. I have direction, performances, editing, and music. Sounds like Davey wants to talk about editing, but maybe you want to talk about performance a little bit. Would you guys have a preference?
Let's talk about editing because I think that's a really big part of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I often talk about how there's two different kinds of editing, right? Davey, do you remember the two different kinds of editing that I often talk about?
No.
He does not listen to the show at all. I'm sure the fans know what I'm talking about, but anyway, there's inter-scene editing, like just editing within a scene from shot to shot. And J-Money, we're going to jump ahead to Resignation.
Okay.
Would be the next photo to come up. There's this shot for shot, and then there's overall story editing, where there's the overall where you're basically deciding, you're rewriting the movie in many ways by how you're structuring this movie. And I think that is what's happening. That's what happened with Miss Sloane. I wanted less flashbacks for sure. I mean, like, I think it's a hard movie to edit because there's a lot of ground to cover and balance. I wanted less flashbacks and less back and forth to the hearing. I don't mind starting with the hearing and then going back, but I only wanted to go back once, not the back and forth. Even the inter-scene editing, I had some issues with. There were several awkward cuts within the scenes. They crossed the line several times. Do you remember what the line is, Davy Joe?
Yeah.
The 180-degree line?
Yeah. You talked about that in the war movie.
Anyway, the 180-degree line is basically if we have a shot, over this shoulder, and like it's me and the computer, and the shots are over here. You can't all of a sudden flip to over here. Because it's a screen direction thing. If you're over here, I'm looking from right to left. And so I always need to look from right to left. So the camera would have to be on this side of me at all times, assuming I'm talking to someone over there, and it would be over their left shoulder and my right shoulder. You don't all of a sudden flip to the other side. This movie went crazy with that, and there's like 3 or 4 scenes where that happened, and I struggle with it. J-Money, you can come back now, by the way.
Okay.
So that's my thing about editing. Davey, Joe, do you have... So I made that comment about the overall structure of the movie from an editing point of view. Did I say something you agree with?
Yeah, I think you might have. I think maybe it might have been...
If I were listening, you might have said something that
I think it might have been better had they gone back to it one time. Just started with the hearing and then gone back to the beginning and then went linearly instead of bouncing. Maybe that's right.
I mean, it didn't ruin the movie for me. I just thought it diffused, I think, the energy, I think.
Yeah.
And that was the part that felt a little contrived. All right, so that's the alarm, guys. So we're gonna start wrapping it up soon. Jay Money, do you have anything else on editing?
Well, I understand why they did that. I understand why they were trying to build slowly and turn the screw as they kept going through the big, kind of like payoff at the end there. But I felt like, yeah, it really slugged the movie. It really it slowed everything down quite a bit. I mean, this movie could have been shorter as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, in fairness, audience, he says that about every single movie.
Well, just the bad ones, which is pretty much everything we see. So, it depends. But I just think that there was a lot of, it got confusing after a certain amount of time. There was a lot of jumping around between everything else, between like when, it wasn't just like, her cutting from present day to a specific time in the past. It was her cutting from the present day to lots of different times in the past. And I think that made it a little bit more choppy and difficult to follow at the end.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I think that was a weak choice. So I agree with that. So I mean, like the last things I want to talk about is I did have some issues with John Madden's direction. I liked all the performances except for the prostitute played by Jake Lacey, and what was the other thing? Oh, I thought the music was outstanding. I thought the music was actually really good and modern and complex and atmospheric.
One of my favorite composers, and I was really happy to find that out at the end.
Oh, I didn't know you know Max Richter.
Oh yeah, I've actually met him. He's a really cool guy.
Oh, cool. Hey, Jim Money knows somebody, everybody. And do you have, before we go, do you guys have any comments about that? In the meantime, Jay Money, maybe get the next photo ready.
Yeah, I do.
The next movie. Next week.
Oh.
I just real quick, since I led with it, Lithgow. I love John Lithgow. But I thought maybe he was a little too Lithgow in this role. I thought that at the end, when he kind of has his moment, he kind of overdid it a little bit. Anyway,
Well,
I didn't mind look, if you want to see Bad Lithgow, The Accountant is where to go for Bad Lithgow.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I liked him.
So, anyway, I don't want to get into that. Let's talk about the next movie. Shall we, J Money?
Yep.
You guys gonna be excited by this? In 2 weeks, December the 19th, we talk about Rogue One. We're going back to the Star Wars universe. You can see how excited J Money is about that. Davy Joe can't be he can't be objective apparently.
I don't need to. I'm
So that's coming up. That'll be our current feature in about 2 weeks' time. That'll also be our Christmas episode. Although apparently I've jumped ahead on that front. Next up in about 10 minutes is the Indie Spotlight. And I'm excited. This is one of our shortest shows ever. We're killing it. Still on fire. Indie Spotlight is coming up next, and it's a movie from 2011, and we weren't initially going to talk about it because we didn't think it was indie enough, but then Davey changed his mind. Indie Spotlight is Drive, ladies and gentlemen, will be our Indie Spotlight for the evening. How do you like our production value tonight? Drive's coming up next in about 10 minutes, and so stay tuned, and we'll send out the link on our Facebook and Twitter. So keep an eye out for the link, and then watch us live while we talk about Drive with Ryan Gosling. Coming up next.